What is the best seating arrangement for a group of high school kids? It's a question I often get asked, and honestly, it's a question I often ask myself. And last year I decided it was small groups. This is my classroom, and I'm here at 2024 to reevaluate that question and kind of think about, of all the different seating arrangements, which ones are the best and for what type of kids. Because when you're coming up with a seating arrangement, there's two main things you have to consider. The first is your clientele. What kind of kids do you have, right? Like, are your kids naughty and you need to kind of separate them? Are they really nice and sweet and you've got an angel of a class? Are they a bit of a mix, right? You have to consider all these things when determining your seating arrangement. And the other thing you have to consider is what kind of learning is taking place. Are you going to be standing at the front lecturing the kids? Or is it going to be a lot of group work? Are you going to have a lot of class discussions? Or is it going to be solo independent work? All these things have to be taken into consideration in order to determine what the best seating arrangement is. So in this video, I'm actually going to trial a bunch in my classroom. And importantly, I'm going to share with you, based on my experience, what are the best seating arrangements? What are the pros and cons of each one? And at the very end of this video, I'm going to share with you and show you what I've decided for my class in 2024 and why. So thanks for joining me. Let's dive on in. Right, so first of all, we've got small groups. It's what I dealt with all of 2023. And then honestly, there's a lot of pros to this kind of seating arrangement. Each group is anywhere between 4, and in the back corner over here, there's 4 people there, 4 and 6. And it allows for group work and collaboration, which is like my favorite thing in education. I figure if the kids aren't talking to one another, they're not really exploring the concepts deep enough. If they're not teaching other kids how to do it, they're not really learning it themselves. So I love collaboration, and I love, honestly, a bit of chatter in my classrooms. But there is a few downsides of the old small groups. The first is that the noise can, get a bit loud. Even for me, at times it can get too loud, so you kind of have to be on top and manage that. But the other thing about groups that I've realized I don't really like, especially for the lecture style of teaching that I often do in mathematics, and that is, as you can see, not every kid is facing the front. So I'm going to take you over here as a perfect example to this desk over here. And the thing I want to show you about being in this sort of position in the classroom is that, first of all, your point of reference and your viewpoint is straight at a wall, right? I'm looking directly at a wall, and in order to face the teaching that is happening, I have to pivot my entire body, right? So I have to pivot, face either the whiteboard or the TV, whatever the teacher's teaching on. But in order to do that, I literally have to move my entire body. And if I'm going to be doing teaching for a long period of time up the front, for this student to be like this, it's quite annoying for them. Furthermore, if they're going to be taking notes, they're constantly doing this, and it's not great for their neck. And it's honestly not great for their engagement. And I've found this year that a lot of kids will honestly just sit here, just listening, sure, but they're not really engaging with the content. So the fact that small groups means that at some point, some students not going to be facing the front, it's a bit of a con. So small groups, great for collaboration, great for fostering a bit of a sense of community in the classroom, but not great in terms of lecturing and, I guess, teaching. It's great for the student, but it's not necessarily great for you, the teacher. One other thing about little groups that I do love, however, is that if you're this kind of person and you like kind of competition, like I do, certainly in the past I've done this, is where you give each group a name. Like, you can just call them red group, blue group, green group, whatever you want. Or if you're into something like Harry Potter, it can be Hufflepuff, Gryffindor. If you run out because there's only 4 houses in Harry Potter, you can call that back group there Ministry of Magic, and that one over there, the Death Eaters, whatever you want. The point is, you give them names and you give them points for doing the right thing, and you take points for them doing the wrong thing. And so if you've got a couple of challenging students, maybe a handful, 2 to 5 in your class, you can easily set up a seating arrangement where you've just got one in each group, and kind of by peer pressure, because the kids don't want to lose points and they certainly want to get points, they keep each other in check. And so you say, okay, I'd love everyone's attention now, guys. Let me just show you this. So if I'm standing here, I'm doing my teaching, I'm like, all right, your attention, thanks, guys. Yeah, Hufflepuff, listening, nice. Ministry of Magic, listening, thanks, guys. And when you're doing that, you're calling to action, or you're pointing out all of the kids who are doing the right thing. There's going to be at least one kid in the other groups who's super competitive, and he's going to tell, or he or she is going to tell the rest of their group, to politely shut up so we don't lose any points. So that sort of thing is something else you can do with groups as opposed to things like lines. But I'm not necessarily gonna do groups this year. I've tried it this year and it was successful, but really, it's a bit of a deal breaker, kids not facing the board. So the next thing I'm gonna look at is a classic. Right, so next up, we got a classic. We've got rows. Now, straight away, there's a big downside with rows, and that's that the classroom for the kids just feels really sterile, feels really boring, and it feels very structured. And this can limit creativity. It can limit kind of like the excitement kids have for coming to your class. So if you're looking for a classroom setup where kind of sparks joy in kids come to your classroom, they're kind of excited to come in, they feel very comfortable, they also feel like they can be themselves, this is not really the classroom layout for you. However, there are a lot of pros to this sort of arrangement. First things first, it straight away counteracts the con from the last seating arrangement in that every single kid is facing the front at all times, right? And if a kid's not, for example, for kids like listening to you teach and then all of a sudden they turn around like this, it's super obvious to you and you can see it immediately that they're not paying attention, right? So you kind of find it way easier to manage the behavior and manage the attention of kids when they're in this sort of seating arrangement, especially for new and beginning teachers. It's really obvious who's paying attention and who's not. Whereas with the group work, the whole point of the group work was that kids are talking to each other and engaging. So these lines are really good for teachers who want to do some more lecture type stuff where they're doing explicit teaching up the front. I'll show you what it's like from the teacher perspective. So when I'm standing up here at the front of the classroom, you can see the kids all the way around the class, okay? And if this kid here starts turning around talking to that kid over there, you can see it immediately. You can call them out straight away and it's super effective, right? So lines are really great for that. The other thing about lines is that as you're walking down the classroom, you've got these little aisles that you can walk down. So if you're doing some teaching and say I'm teaching up there on the TV, I can actually have my iPad in my hands, okay, and I can be standing at the back here. The kids are focused on the TV, but I can see what they're doing. So in our school, we've got devices. Every kid has a laptop or an iPad. So if the kid's sitting here, say this kid right here, and they've got their laptop open, I can see whether they're engaging with the content or not, and I can kind of monitor it. And it's really easy to navigate the classroom because I can just walk straight up and down these aisles here. So that's another pro to having the lines. Again, this is a really good classroom setup if you're kind of a beginning teacher or a new teacher, or you're struggling with a class who are really not paying attention. You've got a naughty group of kids, or you've got a class where you're just really struggling to get them to stay focused, stay on task. This is a great setup for that. You can build some structures and systems in your classroom that work super well with this kind of layout. So highly recommend lines if you're into lecture type style content where you want the kids to be paying attention and taking notes, especially what you're doing, but not so great for collaboration and group work. So is there a way that we can have the strength of the lines while also retaining a bit of that collaboration and group work? And I think there is, with one small change. And with one small change of just pushing two of the columns together, we can get ourselves almost like a group work dynamic, but by maintaining the vision up the front where all the students are paying attention. These four kids right here, all four of them can sort of work together in a unit. You can even give them the group names if you'd like, and they can feel like there's still a bit of collaboration there. There's a bit of creativity in the classroom. They can discuss stuff amongst each other without turning around and getting fully distracted. And I think this is a really good hybrid between the small groups, but also the lines. And I'm thinking at this stage, this is what I'm going to go with in 2024, but I haven't decided yet because there's still one more main style of sitting out that I've seen it work, that I want to show you. Alrighty, and now we have the conferencing style of classroom layout. Now this one is pretty specific to a certain type of kid, and it's also pretty specific to a certain style of teaching and learning. The type of kid has to be someone who is self-regulated. So the reason I say that is that, as you can see, most of the teaching that I'm going to be doing in this big negative space here. So I'm going to be standing around here, navigating around, pivoting on the spot, engaging each and every kid. But what that means is I have a really hard time while teaching to monitor what each kid is doing on their devices or in their book. And so that makes it really hard for you to manage challenging students, and you kind of have to rely on the kids to be self-regulated and interested in their own learning. So I've seen this conferencing style work a lot for students who are in senior school. So students who are taking their senior studies seriously, it's like a tongue twister. They're taking their studies seriously, so they're going to be doing the work properly and staying on task themselves. But the type of content and teaching and learning that this is best for is definitely inquiry-based and discussion-based learning. So I've seen teachers use this really well in English, in subjects like business and legal studies, where you need to debate and discuss topics and have a conversation about, is this relevant, is it not? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a history or arts or English teacher, so I'm not super familiar with it all, but I've definitely seen it in action, definitely seen it work really well, and it's really good for engaging as many kids as possible. So my goal with this kind of teaching would be to get these kids over here to be engaging with these ones here and having a debate, albeit a respectful and topic-driven debate, but a debate nonetheless. And any kid around the forum can weigh in. They can throw up their viewpoint, they can challenge what other kids think, and it's honestly an amazing way to engage the whole class. And it's kind of really hard for a kid to hide. That's another thing. With the lines, with the small groups, kids can they'll find a way to hide. Whereas with this kind of thing, because you're going to be in the middle, right? Let me get my other camera here. Because you're going to be in the middle, you can turn and gesture and engage pretty much every single kid at any point in this process, right? You don't have to be specifically focusing on, one side of the room or just the front row or just a single group. Because this is sort of like a big discussion and a big debate, you're going to be dramatizing a little bit. You're going to be performing a little bit. By the way, speaking of performing, if you want to know why teachers can learn a lot from WWE superstars, especially in terms of their performance, make sure, as the cleaner Gale, make sure you check out the video on the screen now. I think it's one of my most interesting teaching videos. It takes a look at teaching from a different perspective. I think you'll like it a lot. But to finalize this one here, you're doing a little bit of a performance. You're engaging these kids here, and then these ones here, and then these ones here, and you're facilitating the action as the teacher. And if you're a dramatic kind of person, this might be right up your alley. So just consider what kind of kids you have. They have to be self-regulated and interested in their own learning. And also consider what kind of teaching and learning are you doing. If you're just teaching on the whiteboard, this is not necessarily best. And if you're doing group work, it's not necessarily best either, because if you let this one single group work together, that's going to be really, really loud. Now, just by the nature of the kinds of desks I have in my classroom, those two-seater desks, I can't actually show you this one, but I'll show you a photo. They exist everywhere. You've seen them before. Single desks by themselves in exam mode. That's another kind of seating arrangement you can have. The beauty of that seating arrangement is it's really, really easy to control noise and control volume and control engagement with that sort of seating arrangement. You can isolate students that you need to, but it's kind of like a break glass in case of emergency kind of layout. I wouldn't really recommend it for a regular seating arrangement because it's really going to stifle creativity. It's really going to stifle kids talking to one another, and they're going to hate coming to your class. So if you have to use it, please do, but try and use it for brief periods of time. So maybe 1 week where you're like, kids, you're in this arrangement for a week because you have not been behaving. If you want to earn the right to sit in your groups again, you need to demonstrate to me this week that you can. That sort of thing. It also can be really good leading up to an exam or an assessment where you need the kids to work independently to prepare. Then you can definitely put them in exam mode. That's just make sure you use it sparingly, because while powerful, it's got a lot of drawbacks. Rightio, just so to summarize this video, I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios and then let you know what I think is the best seating arrangement for each scenario. The first one being, if you've got a class that you really need to get some control over and you're really struggling with, you really can't go past that exam style single desk or rows. The rows are great. It doesn't stifle creativity and collaboration just as much as the exam mode does, but you still get that situation where you can see what every kid's doing. You can see where their eyes are. You can see if you've got their attention or not. It's just much easier to manage. Okay. Another scenario is if you've got a situation where you want collaboration, you want group work, and you want the kids to just be engaging with one another. You just can't go past groups. It's kind of there in the name, group work, group desks, right? You can still incorporate a lot of behavior management strategies like giving the kids titles. They're giving them a group title and then awarding points and taking points away when they're doing the wrong thing. So you've got behavior management skills in your pocket there. And you can also manage 1 or 2 students, maybe even up to 5 students who are challenging with behavior by separating them all and putting them in individual groups and relying on the peer pressure from each group to keep those kids in line. Next, we've got for building rapport with your classes. So if you really want a situation where you develop a really great relationship with the kids in your class, the kids develop a relationship with each other super well, you really can't go past this conference style or groups. It engages the most kids in the most with the most other people, and you can also go around and kind of just like interact with each group one at a time, pay them attention when they need it, and just start building those relationships. Sometimes those straight rows or those single desks can make kids a bit, offside with you and not really feel like you're there for them. It's a bit sterile. I've used that word a few times, so just be careful if that's your goal. Maybe groups and conferencing is the best for you. And in terms of explicit teaching, when you need the kids to learn specific things and maybe be taking notes and paying attention, you can't go past good old-fashioned rows. But with that said, you don't have to commit to just like one seating style for the entire year. And that's something I've realized while making this video. I came into this video thinking, okay, what style am I going to go with for the entire year? And I realized I'm not. I'm going to decide week to week, lesson to lesson, what the seating arrangement's going to look like depending on where I'm at and what I need. So in the early weeks of the first term, when I'm trying to set my expectations, get the kids in a routine, et cetera, I'm going to go with rows. I'm going to go with rows because I know the kids, I can see where their attention is at, and I can get some really good expectations and routines going straight away. But once I start getting to the point, maybe week 4 or week 5, and I want to start building rapport with my new students and really start building some relationships and finding out who they are, what they like, I think I'm going to go to groups for a couple of weeks. Get some group work activities going on, get the kids to start building a community amongst each other. And then maybe towards the end when they're studying for their exam, maybe I'll go exam mode, maybe I'll jump back into rows, but I might do the rows instead of having the 2 desks combined for 4 students, I might just go 2 here, so they can work with a partner but not in big groups. That way they can stay independently working and but still stay, have someone to chat to, because otherwise it's a bit boring. So that's something I've come to realize in this video, and I hope you have too, is that some seating arrangements are better for some kids, some seating arrangements are better for some scenarios, but at the end of the day, it's your classroom, you can change it however you like. And if you're sitting there thinking, Mark, I have a new classroom every single lesson. I actually don't get my own classroom. I understand that and empathize with it. For my first 4 years, I think, I didn't have the same classroom. I don't even think I had the same classroom for 2 lessons in a day. So I was moving around a lot. Just keep in mind, it takes 5 minutes to rearrange a classroom. You've seen me do it here 4 or 5 times already today, and you can get the kids to do it as well. Say, all right, you 4 strong boys over there, I really need you to rearrange the classroom. Can you guys put it in rows? Yeah, so you go 2, 2, 2, 2, yep, sweet, yeah, cool. And you send them in. Boys love a job. I did when I was in high school, and I found that they still do. Set 4 boys onto a manual labor job and they love it. So they can do that at the start of the lesson while you're telling every other kid what what the lesson's going to be about or something. And the last thing I'll say, because I'm starting to ramble on, it's becoming less and less like a classroom layout video and more about just classroom skills as a teacher. But if you want someone to do something, so you want students to say, change the classroom for you, you've got to give them something in return. Right, some boys will just do it, but others won't want to. And you say to them, look, if you guys change this entire classroom layout for me, I'm going to let you sit wherever you want. You get first dibs on where you sit. And look, that will work for some kids. It won't work for others, but that's a little trick there for you as well. But this video is getting quite long. So with that all said, I'm going to go for rows to start. I'm going to go for single desk rows too, not the conjoined ones just yet. I'm going to go 2, 2, 2, 2 in terms of seats. Let's start with rows, maybe move into the connected rows later in the term, do some group work later. But what I've realized is I'm going to change it depending on what I need it to be. But first, I'm going to be doing a lot of lecturing and a lot of teaching. I need kids to be paying attention up the front, and so rows is the way to go. I do my teaching, however, not necessarily on the whiteboard. Let me show you here. I don't necessarily do all my teaching up here on the whiteboard. I often use this TV over here because it allows me to use my iPad. And as I was talking about before, I can take my iPad, I can stand at the back of the classroom and actually do my teaching on the iPad. And the students can see it come up on the TV. And the way I do it, I use OneNote, which is a Microsoft program. You've probably heard of OneNote before, and it allows you to do stuff on your iPad and the kids can see it live on their devices. So if I make a lesson at home and I can send the emails, kids an email and say, hey guys, look at the OneNote. You can see the lesson that's up there now, and I want you to do that for homework. They can see it immediately. I don't have to send it in the email. When I'm doing it live in class, it appears on the student devices if the network's good enough. So OneNote and class notebooks are a really incredible teaching resource. If you're unsure of how to create one, I've got a video on screen now which takes you through the entire process. Make sure you go over and watch that video. If you like this one, make sure you give it a like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. This was a really chaotic video.